Really cool that's going on when we compare the difference between two consecutive square numbers. I've seen a lot of videos on the internet that point out this pattern and maybe even talk about the formula for it, but none that actually explain what's going on in a visual way that makes a lot of sense. So here we go. Square numbers and the difference between them. So one definition of square numbers is that a number is square if you can take that number of dots and arrange them into a square. So if I were to take 10 dots and try to put them in a square, I could get a 3 by 3 square, but that 10th dot would not fit in the square. It'd be hanging out on the side, so therefore 10 is not square. Let's look at a picture of this. We can see some examples of square numbers. And on the left, we have the different notations. I'm using the letter S for square, and I read this as S sub 1. This is the first square number, which is just a single dot. It's 1 dot tall and 1 dot wide, and 1 times 1 is 1 squared, which is 1. So 1 is a square number. The second square number, S sub 2, is what happens when you make a square out of 2 dots tall and 2 dots wide, which is 2 times 2, or 2 squared, which is 4, and so on. You can see this pattern increases. I've shown all the way up through the 5th square number here. And now, we all know this, that these are square numbers, but now let's look at the difference between them. Here are the square numbers here, and when we look at 1, if we add 3 to 1, we get 4. Well, how much do we have to add to 4 to get to the next square number? The answer would be 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. And 9 plus 7 more is 16. 4 squared plus 9 is 5 squared. 5 squared plus 11 is 6 squared, and so on. So we can see that this pattern emerges, that the differences are consecutive, that means in a row, odd, that means odd, not even, integers, so whole numbers. And the big question is, I wonder why. So many YouTube videos just leave it at this point, that it's just a pattern. Look, interesting. But why is this a pattern? I wonder. And in mathematics, wondering and exploring is what it's all about. So next, if we're going to be really looking at these differences, let's think about what difference means. One definition is that to find the difference between two numbers, you subtract, you do minus. So one number minus another number is the difference between those two numbers. Another way to think about it is how much do you have to add to one number to get to the next number? So let's look here, and this is the magic, guys. This is the new stuff here, considering it visually. So I've drawn 3 squared in green here. 3 by 3, you can see there's 9 dots total. That is 3 squared inside this green square here. And now let's lay 4 squared underneath it. So the difference between 3 squared and 4 squared are these 7 dots out here. You have to add 3 more blue dots underneath to make there be 1 more row here. And then you add 3 more blue dots on the right-hand side to have there be a 4th column. But then look, you need to add this 1 extra dot in the corner. That 1 extra dot is just 1, and that is why the difference, these 7 new dots here, is an odd number. Remember, even though 3 is odd, 2 3s is even. So however many dots are here are going to be the same number of dots here, and that's always going to be an even number. But there's 1 extra little dot that you got to fill in the corner is why the difference is odd. So moving forward, we can view this, that the difference, the way you get from 3 squared, the way you get all the way to 4 squared is by adding 3 on the bottom and 3 on the right, and then 1 more in the corner. That's looking at the stuff underneath my arrow. But one more way to think about this, a slightly different way to look at that formula, is we're adding 3 on the bottom here, that's the green 3 on the top of the arrow, and we're actually adding 4 on the right, yes? So 3 squared plus 3 plus 4 is how you get to 4 squared. The difference between them is 7. That's 3 plus 4. And you can really see 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and indeed the difference between 3 squared and 4 squared is 7. It's 3 plus 4. Really cool, right? Let's look at one more example. Let's look at the difference between 7 squared, which is here in orange. That's a whole lot of dots. That's 49 dots there. And in order to grow from 7 squared up to 8 squared, I need to put 7 more dots on the bottom to increase that 8th row there. And then I need to put 8 more dots on the right to make an 8th column. So now we're 8 by 8 total. And again, notice I'm not thinking of this as 7 and 7 and 1 more. I'm just thinking of it as 7 and 8. So the way you get from 7 squared to 8 squared is you add 7 and 8, which is 15. And indeed, 49 plus 15 more is 64. Isn't that a really neat visual proof to understand what's going on? All right, so in conclusion, I'm going to generalize this. I'm going to talk about how we get from a squared to b squared. And I want to note in yellow, these are consecutive. A and b are consecutive. So they are 2 numbers in a row where b is 1 more than a. And the formula for how we do that is to get from a squared to b squared, that we add a plus b. So a plus b is the difference between the two. And so let's look at one more example with really big numbers. I did not want to draw this picture, but if we want to look at how we get from 44 squared, which is my favorite number, up to 45 squared, we need to add 44 dots down low on the bottom to add 1 more row. And then we have to add 45 dots on the right-hand side to get 1 more full column there. And indeed, that's true. 44 squared is this large number here, 1,936. 45 squared is 2,025, and the difference between the two is 44 plus 45, which is 89. Check it in your calculator. 2,025 minus 1936 is indeed 89. Bada bing, bada boom, and there you go.